Welcome back to Rediscovering You. Today's episode is really special to me because it touches on something that is deeply personal, supporting the mental health and the resilience of our youth. Now, as someone who has spent many years as a school psychologist, I've witnessed firsthand the lasting impact of bullying, isolation, and hopelessness. I've also seen the profound healing that's possible when young people are reminded of their worth and rediscover their inner voice. My guest today, Barbra L. Upton, is someone who has answered a deep calling to be a part of that healing. Barbra is a certified life coach, mentor, and suicide prevention advocate, and she recently published her first book, Finding Hope's Voice, a choose your own journey book and guide on surviving and speaking up against bullying. This book is a powerful guide designed to equip kids and teens with tools to navigate bullying and reclaim their inner strength. I had the honor of being an advanced reader for Finding Hope's Voice, and I can tell you from the bottom of my heart, this book is everything. I loved it. I highly recommend it, and I wrote a glowing review because I truly believe it's a lifeline for so many young people. Barbara's story, her heart, and her work embody everything this podcast is about, which is helping people, no matter what their age, reconnect with their courage, their voice, and their true self. Barbara, I am so honored to have you here on the podcast today. Welcome.
Thank you, Laura. It's a pleasure and a privilege to be here. And again, thank you for contributing to the success of this book. So it really meant a lot to have you as an advanced reader.
It's been an absolute honor and pleasure, my pleasure. Now, I'd love to open up this interview by giving you space just to share a bit about yourself, your
Okay.
story, and maybe what ultimately inspired you to write this book.
Okay. Yes. So about 15 years ago, I was inspired to write this book. It was like a seed planted in me. And it probably had a lot to do with just my background and experience working with youth. I've always been a youth mentor and an advocate. I professionally, my career is in human resources. However, I've had the privilege of applying my professionalism and working with youth because in the last, I would say, 12 to 15 years, I've had the privilege of serving as an HR professional in organizations and institutions that actually served youth. For example, Boys and Girls Clubs was one of them, where I served as the Vice President of Human Resources. I would take time out of my work day, to actually identify youth in the club that were club members and actually take time to mentor them. So I did that in addition to fulfilling my career responsibilities. Also, in the last, I would say 10 years, I've had the privilege of working for academic institutions. And although they were higher education, it still allowed me to work with youth and young adults. And in those roles, I would had opportunity of mentoring them. And then more recently, becoming a life coach. And part of my reasoning for doing that was to transform lives. And then I also received my certification as a QPR, uh, bully prevention certified gatekeeper. And so QPR stands for question, persuade, and refer. And so that is for those who are unfamiliar with that program or certification, it's actually geared towards training individuals on how to identify and respond to signs of suicide as part of the prevention measures. And so all of that certainly influenced my reasoning for wanting to do this work and serve as an advocate. And then from my own personal experience as a child, I too experienced bullying. And then after when I started actually doing some research, it was heart-wrenching to see articles and stories out there of youth, even as young as 5 years old, who were taking their life, unfortunately, because of the impact that bullying had on them. And then lastly, I'll just wrap up this answer by saying I also interviewed my youth, my children, my own personal children, about their experiences with bullying. And, at the time, they were adults. So they were past that stage in their life. However, when they shared their stories, which some of them were stories I had never heard or were unaware of, which even further encouraged me to write this book. And so I want to be able this book to be just a message of hope and resilience. And I wanted to educate and empower youth to use their superpower, tell someone when they're being bullied, but also give them practical strategies and resources that they can use to actually empower them to also take a stand and do something themselves.
Wow, what an inspiring story that you just shared. And one thing that you mentioned that I want to just touch on and maybe elaborate a bit on is how you just mentioned that your children, now adults, sharing stories that they had that you didn't know about. And and then I think that that just speaks volumes about like this is a topic that a lot of our youth, if they are struggling, they are quite often keeping it to themselves or feeling like they're alone in what's happening to them and not sharing or talking about their experiences. And that can have, as you and I both know, such, tragic
Yeah.
um, effects if we're not talking about this. So this book, is this also a way to maybe help people, youth, parents, teachers, educators start a conversation about mental health, about bullying, about suicide prevention?
Yes, absolutely. So I designed the book to serve as an educational resource and as well as a self-help guide for the reader. And the readers that I target are between the ages of 9 and 15. However, it also it's a great book for those who are older teens as well. But in the book, it has practical strategies, advice, some also helpful tips.
Mhm.
It has reflective questions. And as the title states, or the subtitle states, it's a choose your own journey book. And so it's designed to encourage the reader to apply problem solving skills, critical thinking skills. There's some reflective questions. And it's a very interactive book. There's even two songs that my son, one of my children, my oldest actually wrote specifically for the book. But all of that is geared towards encouraging the reader to do some self-reflection,
Mhm.
to really do some critical thinking about the topic, but also engage in the book and really apply some techniques that will empower them. However, for parents, to kind of go back to your question, how parents and even educators or even clinicians that are trained in the mental health field can also use this book as a guide in their engagement with the youth, because it helps to promote dialogue between the youth and the individual who may be facilitating any type of dialogue or discussion or education around the topic. And so the book actually serves as that resource for them to use. In addition, to supplement the book, I also created a lesson plan that can be utilized in the school setting or even in the home to help guide those conversations. So I tried to think of all of those important tools and resources that would be beneficial to help promote that dialogue and make that what is definitely a very sensitive topic much more easier and where the reader and those engaging with the readers can actually have some productive conversations that would be very beneficial for both.
And after reading your book, what this book is so unique. It's and I say that because it's not often that you find a book that not only is so good at engaging the young reader, because it has things that young people are really interested in, like the choose your own journey and the reflective questions, and it really just it's interactive, which it definitely helps the reader be more engaged in it and to really soak in the knowledge that you are speaking, that you're sharing in this book. But also, it is such a powerful tool for the adults that are utilizing this book, as you said, whether it's in a school setting or whether it is in the home setting, because mental health and suicidality are topics that a lot of adults are not comfortable talking about and are like, I'm not qualified to talk about this, so I'm just not going to talk about this. But your book and the guide that you have made that accompanies the book gives the adults that are using it really tangible, step by step tools of how to structure a conversation, what to do. And it just empowers the adults to feel like, okay, this is a topic that I'm equipped to talk about. I don't have to find an expert somewhere and so just not talk about it with my young person in my life. Because I think that's one of the greatest treasures of this book is that it empowers adults to feel like they have the skills to tackle this very tricky topic with more confidence, and that's what this is about, is empowering people to feel comfortable talking about an uncomfortable topic. So I'm
Absolutely.
really impressed with how you were able to do that. And you mentioned your son who wrote the songs for this book, and I have to go back to that because that is another thing that is just
Mhm.
so unique to this book. And the songs that your son wrote, and I listened to them, I think that they're so cool. Like the young people that are going to be engaging with this book and to hear the songs that are accompanied with this is just another way that it speaks to the age bracket that you are trying to target. Can you just share a little bit about your son's background and the style of the songs that he wrote to accompany this book?
Absolutely. So Ryan, and he goes by the stage name Uptown. Upton is my oldest son. So, and the three main characters, by the way, which are named in the book, Chris, Cross, and Applesauce,
Love
they
that.
are actually representatives of my children. And so, my oldest, Ryan, who wrote the songs, he his character in the book is Cross, and so he serves as the older brother who mentors his two younger siblings, my other two children, who are represented in the book as Chris and yes, Chris and Applesauce. So as far as his background, so he is a local, Kansas City, and I'm in Kansas City, so that's my home location. And he's a local artist here, and he is has all of his life just walked the road of youth ministry. Now he's into prison ministry, and so he has a master's in divinity. Also, he has a psychology degree, undergrad degree, and but that's what he does part time. And he also has his own professional rap group called gospel rap group called Undrafted. And so, when I thought about writing this book, I thought, what a really cool thing it would be to actually include songs. And so he was very open to the idea and very generous and sharing his talent in the book. And so that's his contribution to the book. So there are two songs. One introduces him and his siblings. And so it tells a little bit about who they are. And then the second song actually touches on the main focus of the book. So it talks about how to stand up and stand out or speak up and speak out, excuse me. Speak up and speak out is the name of the rap song that he created specifically for the book. And so I recall, he and I, when we were talking about adding songs to the book, well, what is a creative way to get the reader to actually hear the songs on a printed page? So
Mhm.
we took it a step further and we came up with the idea of adding the songs on the printed page through a QR code. And so we're all familiar with that. All you need is a cell phone. And so the reader can use that as a way to actually hear the music come off the pages. And so that's definitely a really cool element of this book as well. Again, as you stated, another way to engage the reader.
And it's so cool. And you really have made this book as user friendly as possible. Like everything from the guides that go along with it, the QR codes, like you're just giving everything there, and just so it's so accessible and so interactive. And you know that the youth all have their cell phones out anyways, so they're gonna see that QR code and they're gonna scan it and they're gonna hear the song, and just hearing the music and the message behind the words and the music, it just makes it another layer of why this resource is just so unique and so amazing. I have a question for you. I'm going to go back and if you're okay, I want to just talk a little bit more about you specifically, Barbara, because at the start of our conversation, you said that this book, you had the idea for it 15 years ago. How come it took 15 years? Can you talk about what that journey has been like for you to have an idea to actually create it and have it come to fruition?
Yeah, good question. And it's hard to believe it took 15 years to before that I actually was able to get it fully written and published. But writing, well, first of all, let me just say, I've always enjoyed creative writing. However, writing a book, this is my first one. So that's been a learning process. And so when, like I said, the idea came to me, it was almost like a divine assignment. It came to me in a dream, and then it's just stuck with me, and it kept tugging at me and tugging at me. And so I continued to have it always, in my thoughts. And then because it was always in my thoughts and was always a goal, I continued throughout that time to research, pull articles, read stories, unfortunately, about youth who were taking their life. Also, educate myself more on the topic. So in the course of that time, I was doing that. So I've collected many articles, lots of resource materials and information. Again, getting my certification. Those are the things that I did in the course of those years while also keeping the idea in my head. And I remember one day going to listen to a speaker who happened to be a very avid lover of working with youth. He's an educator, and he talked about his deep passion for wanting to educate youth. And it inspired me so much that when I went home that night, the actual entire first chapter of the book came to me in a dream. And that's how inspiring it was. And so that was the start of, okay, this is actually coming together. I now have the first full chapter. And I remember getting up after the dream and just writing, very feverishly to get all
Mhm.
the details in my dream onto paper. And then I just kept continuing to refine that. And then this past year, I'm a believer in vision boards. So the
Me
previous,
too.
yes. So at the beginning of 2024, I decided, okay, I'm going to get really serious. I had picked up ideas, and that's when I came up with the, choose your own journey idea. So I had all these ideas, but yet I just had this writer's block. So I even joined a writers group where I used to live in Charlotte, North Carolina, and they have a really good writers group. So I joined that to become educated about the technical side of writing a book and what that entailed. So that was very beneficial. But still, I had to write the book. So I really did some reflection in addition to putting it as a goal on my 2024 vision board. I had to do some internal reflection and really ask myself what was blocking me, what was preventing me from producing this book. And it really came down to commitment. And so then I had asked myself, what is it going to take to get me committed to writing this book? Because it's so important, it's so essential. And every time I would hear about another child taking their life, that encouraged me more and more. And I ended up getting a accountability partner. And that's what did it for me. I had to really go within and figure out personally what was blocking me from finishing this project. And so this accountability partner and I met probably bi-weekly on a Saturday, and we storyboarded. And I pulled out my resources and all my research I had done over the years, and they held me accountable to getting it completed. And fortunately, I was able to get it published and find a great publisher
Mhm.
who actually did all the technical work for me. And all I had to focus on was writing the book. And that included coaching me. They did all my marketing for me. And I really wanted it to be a quality product because I knew the audience that I wanted to target, the widespread of how far I needed it to go. It wasn't something that I wanted produced and put on the shelf.
Mhm.
I particularly wanted to target not only youth, but also educators, get it into schools and school districts and get it in the hands of counselors. And I wanted them to use it as a tool. So I had to make sure that I invested what I needed to invest it to make it a quality resource guide. And so December the 12th, it was actually uh, placed on Amazon, and now it's a published book and something I'm very, very, very excited about.
I
So
love it. Your 2024 vision board came to fruition. It was
yeah.
published in December 2024. That is just awesome. I love that you shared that the original idea came to you like as a download. It came to you in a
Mhm.
dream. And that's something we talk about a lot on this show is things like our own inner intuition or having that gut or that nudge or just something like where you feel like you are meant to do something or you're called to do something, but like not everybody trusts that. Not everybody like puts stock into that. Um, can you talk about a little bit more in depth about what, when you got the initial, or even when you got that download for the first chapter, how did you know it to be true in your heart and soul?
Because it wouldn't go away.
Mm,
It kept tugging and kept tugging and kept tugging.
hmm
And I have found just from my past experience and other more spiritual, feelings like that, that it's something bigger than me and I need to
hmm
follow suit. And
hmm
that's why I refer to it as a divine assignment. Something outside of me was actually encouraging me to do this work.
Wow, I just have chills listening to you say that. Um, and now I'm wondering, now that you're on the other side of producing this amazing book and resource, how do you feel?
It's a relief to
Yeah.
finally get it out, first and foremost.
hmm
Secondly, it's exciting. It's fulfilling to know that I have the ability to impact and transform lives in a whole different level and not just within my arm's reach, but worldwide through this book. And that's what my intention is. It's to save lives. And it's to change the experiences of youth who have been suffering through the harm of bullying and then the mental health consequences that follow and even lead to suicide. So it is my hope that this book, that we give hope a voice,
hmm
and so I was intentional about the title of the book, Finding Hope's Voice, because I recognize through all the many stories, even through my own personal experiences and my children's experiences, how easy it is to lose hope. And
hmm
I wanted to empower youth and have this book be that resource to do that
hmm
and guide them through empowering themselves.
I love that. I love
Mhm.
that. Would you mind sharing any story, whether it's your own personal story, your a story from your family members or somebody, a youth that you worked with over the years, somebody that just comes to mind that really could have benefited from having a resource like this and maybe what you wish you could have offered or what message you wish they could have access to then.
Good question. I think about my children, and the stories their personal stories that they share, but I'm grateful that they were able to overcome a lot of um, just the challenges that they
Mhm,
personally experienced. But I would have to say even more importantly, the youth, unfortunately, who took their lives, who
mhm,
didn't feel like they had an option. And this book is intentional about providing them with guidance. And I'll share just real quickly what some of the elements that I sharing the book in hopes to save lives and to let them know that they have other choices. And so the book not only does it define what bullying is, so they're clear that, but it also expresses it's a form of violence
Mhm.
as well. And then it gives them tips for coping with that. It gives them a list of resources that they can actually call, text, or even email.
Mhm.
It talks to them about the importance of telling someone, such as a trusted adult, about their experience, someone who can actually provide support and help. And that's something that is extremely important. As I mentioned earlier, when I interviewed my now adult children about the book I was writing, and they shared stories of their experiences in bullying when they were in school, I was unaware.
Mhm.
They kept it silent. And so that just the burden as a parent and the sadness about that, knowing that they were going through that experience and they didn't feel comfortable enough to bring that forward is very heart-wrenching. And so I emphasize the importance of sharing your voice. It talks about also the effects of bullying, the emotional impact, the physical impact, and also the impact it has on their academics. And so it's just, it provides them with knowledge. And then it even talks about, and so the first, let me just say, the first half of the book is storytelling and is sharing experiences. And it, the choose your own journey um, format is set up where there's three different endings to the story.
Mhm.
Hope is the main character who's being bullied. Applesauce, who is portrayed as my daughter, is the bystander, the friend of Hope. And so it gives the perspective of if you're a bystander and maybe not directly being impacted by bullying, but you know someone who is, and you're not sure what to do. So it gives that perspective as well. But in the storytelling, it it there's three separate endings, and then the reader is asked to choose make a decision on how Hope, who's being bullied, how they should respond. And one of those ways in which they're granted the option to choose is to not say anything at all, to remain silent. And
Mhm.
then the other two choices are to tell a trusted adult, or if you're a bystander, here's what you can do as well. And so when they, based on the choice that the reader takes, then it takes them to the corresponding chapter so that they can see the outcome
Mhm.
of what happens if they make that choice over the other. And so again, it's intended to help them understand the importance and the advantages of and the disadvantages of those choices. And so hopefully that will encourage them to
Mhm.
have confidence and actually courage to share what's going on with them or someone they know that's being bullied. And then here's the action steps that they can take. Not only tell, but here's what you can do about it. And here's how you can change the outcome of yourself or someone you know who's experiencing bullying, as well as thoughts of suicide.
Mhm.
And so didn't mean to be as so long-winded, but
No,
that's
that was a great answer. That was a
yeah,
really great answer. And I think you bring up another really wonderful point is that this book is also intended to speak to the bystanders and to let people know if they're seeing something that they have agency and that their words and actions have so much power and ability to help another person who is hurting and that it just takes one person to speak up, to speak out, as you say, and to really make a difference and possibly even save somebody's life,
absolutely.
which is incredible, really incredible. Um, so for anybody that's listening right now and just wondering more about if they're starting to think about what are some common signs, what are some common things to look out for a youth that might be struggling, and what are some things that you really want to help people know to be on the lookout that if you see something happening or if you see some changes in a young person that you care about,
Yeah.
that it might be time to do a little bit of investigating and see what's happening?
Yeah. Usually it's a change in their behavior.
Hmm.
And or they're isolating themselves, for example, withdrawing, they're not their normal self, they're giving up, maybe they're doing their favorite activities. Like,
Hmm.
for example, if they've always been interested in sports or hanging out with their friends, all of a sudden that behavior changes. Those are usually signs that there's something else much deeper going on that is impacting their mental health.
Hmm.
And bullying is definitely a prime reason that could be the case.
Hmm.
And unfortunately, one of the statistics that I wanted to be sure and share with you is that those who are typically being bullied are more prone to have thoughts of suicide
Hmm.
and or do self-harm. And so that is something that we were definitely want to be mindful of. And in the book, it actually gives examples of what are some of those signs to look
Hmm.
for. And let's see, I was going to change, like uh, some direct verbal clues would be if someone directly says, I wish I were dead. Sometimes, jokingly, as you know, people will make that statement, but that's definitely the first clue if they make a statement like that. Or an indirect verbal clue would be, my family would be better off without me.
Hmm.
That's an example of an indirect clue. A behavioral clue, as I mentioned, if they're isolating themselves or giving away their prized possessions, that's another example. And then the situational clue, which is the fourth type of clue, is um, the incident, what may have led them to maybe the crisis that they're experiencing or change in behavior, like being bullied or death of a parent or a best friend or close family member, especially if it's by suicide, that
Hmm.
may prompt them to think more about taking their own life, unfortunately. And so those are just some ways. And then the book also emphasizes the importance of interventions.
Hmm.
And counseling is also an important intervention, which fortunately this day and age is becoming more acceptable and that there's less stigma behind professional counseling. But it's so extremely important. And it's definitely one of the things that I want to emphasize in the school setting, which I know is becoming more and more uh, you know, a service that we're providing our youth because we have to. They're in need of that, and so that's very very good to know that more and more schools are actually providing that level of service. But this book is also for those counselors to utilize as well in their endeavors to in that work. So
And it's, as I said earlier, such a wonderful tool to have in a school setting for whether it's teachers or counselors to read this book with youth and be able to open up dialogue. And thank you again for sharing those signs that for adults to look out for, or even, if you're a young person listening to this and you have a friend or a family member that is showing some of these signs to take it seriously. It's so much better to take a benign statement seriously than to ignore something when, it could be a cry for help. So I appreciate you sharing that. And your book also provides very explicit resources for adults to access or young people to access too. So that is in there as well. So if you do see any of the signs that Barbara just talked about, it also tells you what you can do about it, so you're not left feeling helpless. And that's another really important piece, again, just to empower anybody whose hands are on this book as to recognizing the signs and symptoms of a young person struggling maybe at the hands of bullying and what you can do about it.
absolutely,
Thank you for that. So now that your book is published, the word is out. Your message is no longer just in your minds and in your family unit, even. It is now spreading out into the greater community, the world. And I'm so excited for you for that. I'm so excited to see the positive impact that this book is going to have. I'm curious for you, Barbara, what do you see for the next steps for yourself, whether it's in relation to this book or anything else that you are seeing in your future?
good question. So I would like to take this book a step further beyond the pages and actually create some programming and actually utilized peers to actually help me in developing that programming, where the book is utilized as a tool. As I mentioned, the lesson plan, which you can see behind me, is that's the cover, the book cover, and the cover for the lesson plan that I created. But to actually apply it as something actionable, an actionable tool that we can utilize inside the school settings. And I'm also trained in restorative justice.
Love it.
And so I would like, rather than make it a punitive process for those who maybe have committed the act of bullying, but instead come up with some type of way to reform them and change by changing their behavior. And and that's through education, helping them understand the impact of their choices and decisions and how they treat others. In the book, not only does it emphasize resilience and empowerment for the individual being targeted as being bullied, but also for those that are bullies, it also talks about the importance of kindness, the importance of respect, and the importance of love, and also choosing healthy versus unhealthy relationships, and the importance of choosing, you're choosing your friends and those who influence you and your behavior, and how that can impact the choices that you make as an individual. It also, in the book, explains what are those bullying behaviors and has the reader evaluate whether or not that they are a bully themselves, even if they didn't think of themselves as a bully. So,
Hmm. Hmm.
yeah,
Yeah.
but yeah, but programming, getting out there. So I've actually been approached by a couple of schools asking if we could come in and even do an assembly or actually develop programming. Um, I want to, really, put together a marketing plan. I'm attending a mental health conference that I hope to get some more resources. I want to partner with other advocacy agencies that so I've reaching out to those agencies in hopes to do that. And really, I'm trying to not leave any rock, you know, not
It
unturned.
helped.
Yeah, in hopes to get the word out, and really because it's an epidemic right now,
Yes.
unfortunately, more than according to the CDC, and this was as late as 2022. One of their statistics indicated is the second leading cause of death among youth is suicide,
Mm.
and with that being tied a lot to bullying, and up the anywhere from 3,000 to 4,000 youth are taking their life every year. And so that's why I'm being aggressive in my approach to this very sensitive topic.
And I applaud you for being as aggressive as you are in this because it is such an important topic. You are literally saving lives in the work that you are doing. And it is so clear that this is not just a part of who you are, it is who you are. Like this is your mission. And you're being so intentional with, as you said, leaving no stone unturned and thinking about this important topic from every possible angle to figure out how you can have the greatest impact, how you can help the most people, and how you can really, make a change in the world for this. And it is such a tragedy that so many of our young people are committing suicides. Many of them are former victims of bullying. And this is such important work that you're doing. And you're really giving voice and giving hope to so many out there through your work. And I really thank you for what you're doing.
I appreciate that. Yeah.
Is there any question or anything that you were hoping to share that maybe I did not think to ask you about?
Yes, actually, I would be remiss if I didn't give credit to my other two children who actually were contributors to the book. And so my second oldest is he Alexander Garvin, and he is portrayed as Chris in the book.
Mhm.
He is professionally a 3D artist, and so 3D animator artist. I think I said that properly. But anyway, and he's also a professor at his alumnus where he graduated from. But He is the illustrator of the book. So the characters that you see behind me, and that's actually him with the bubble gum in his mouth because yeah, so he is the illustrator behind the book. And then to the right of me is that's my daughter. Her name is Olivia, and she is portrayed as applesauce in the book. And so she is the bystander and who's mostly narrating the book. And so she also assisted with helping me proof the book and actually refine the story. And so I'm very appreciative of them. And then I also included my one and only grandchild, Zoe. She's a character in the book as well. And so it's a personal, not only is it part of my personal mission, but it's also a legacy. And so,
Yes, it
yeah,
is.
very excited about it.
I love that your family came together to make this such an amazing, amazing book and resource, and all of your unique talents really contributed to make this something so special that no doubt is going to be shared for generations to come in your family. And what an incredible gift that is, Barbara.
Thank you. Yes.
It has been such an incredible pleasure and an honor having you on this show today to share your message about hope and sharing your new book. Um, I'm going to include a link for access to this book, which if you're listening and you're wanting to grab a copy of it, I highly encourage you to do so. You will not regret it. It's an amazing book and resource for any parents, educators, really anybody that cares about young people. Get this book. It is so good. And is there any other resources or things that you want listeners to be aware of to learn more about you or know about your work that maybe I did not think to mention?
Yes, Laura, if you could also please include my email address. So for anyone out there who is interested in working with me, partnering with me, brainstorming, really collaborating and helping me fulfill this mission, I'm very excited to hear from you. So Laura will provide my contact information where you can reach out to me directly. And so this is not this, it takes a village, as they say. And so I really need the support and assistance to actually fulfill this mission. It's going to take not just myself, but collectively everyone. So,
Thank you for sharing that. And if you're listening right now and you've been thinking, how can I get involved? What can I do? This is so important, but I don't know what to do. Reach out to Barbara. Like she is a force, and you together will be able to even have a greater and bigger impact. So, yes, this is your sign. Call Barbara, email Barbara. Like, this is fantastic. Barbara, thank you so much for being on the show today. I am thrilled for you. I'm so excited to see where your journey takes you next. And I am going to close out with one of the amazing songs that is included in this book. So stay tuned and listen to that. Have a beautiful day. And thank you again, Barbara.
all right. Thank you. And thank you for allowing me to utilize your platform. I appreciate it.
And then you just